Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and this is another installment of my series of Truth in This Art Beyond, where right now I'm focusing with the fine folks in Austin, Texas. I have curated a list of folks, and today I have the privilege of speaking with President and CEO of Edge of Your Seat Consulting, Inc., and the current CEO of Six Square here in Austin. Please welcome Pamela Benson Owens. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Glad to have you on, and also much compliments to your eyewear as well. I'm a fan of good eyewear.
Thank you. I'm a fan of good eyewear as well. It's my thing.
I dig it. It was one time I bought these glasses that I'm wearing currently, and one of my peers was like, "Oh, that's Yves Saint Laurent." I was like, "Oh, these old things." I literally just got them. Sticker was still on them.
I have 88 pairs. The joke around here is I pretty much wear black or some version of black every day. Yeah. So I don't have to think about it, but I'm going to definitely have good glasses on.
I love it. I love it. So I want to start off with having, you introduce yourself, because I'm giving the copy and paste, right? I'm giving this is the official title. And as we were talking about a little bit, we call it something different. We might call it this, we might call it that. So could you introduce yourself and tell us about Edge of Your Seat Consulting?
Absolutely. So Pamela Benson Owens, I am a longtime entrepreneur here in Austin. I'm not an Austinite because my mother did not birth me here, but I'm married to a native Austinite who will not allow me to call myself an Austinite. He was actually birthed here. But I've been here a long time, since I was a kid. And I've been in business for a very long time. And the reason why people are always like, you wear a lot of hats, it's because by nature of my consulting firm, a lot of times we go into organizations that might need organizational culture support, change management support, HR infrastructure, stabilizing funding. And I will actually become part of the staff in an interim role, get them strengthened as an organization, and back out and go to the next thing. So at any given time, I'm always the CEO of Edge of Your Seat, but I might also be the VP of Institutional Advancement at Houston Tilton, the Executive Director at Umlauf Garden, the CEO of Six Square, which is our Black Cultural Arts District. I got that assignment 4 years ago when the elders told me I was doing that job. And so that's why it appears like, why is she there? Why is she there? Because I'm about doing whatever needs to be done.
I dig it. And I love hearing that. It's like, from what I'm hearing and what I read, it's like, you're the fixer. You're the person that they hit up like, look, we need PBO to come in here, sort this out, get this right.
I take that title humbly. I don't know if I always have the answers, but by way of my style of leadership, I think the questions are more important. Mm-hmm. So I do think, I don't know if I always fix it, but I do think that I try to come forth with what questions should we be asking ourselves and what might we have missed. So I humbly take that seat. I found out in the last couple of years from the younger set, I call them the Thundercats, that I am an elder now too. And so I am trying to take that role on with deep respect and admiration for those in this community who show up every day doing the work.
Yeah. It's odd when you turn and when you realize that you're now an elder. Like, I have been told that, oh, you're the podcast elder, because I've been doing it for as long as I have. And I'm like, look, I'm 37. I can't take that title yet. Can we hold off a little bit?
It's so hard. It's so hard. I was reminded by a colleague who I started with in the community that after I got done with college and moved back to Austin, that I took my first board seat in a nonprofit prior to being 21 and legal to drink. He was like, hey, you were 20. I was like, was I? And so that seems like many moons ago, but it just speaks to being the child of two parents who just demanded that we know our community and work actively in it.
So community-based work, community-focused work is very important. And would you say that's one of the drivers, one of the motivators for just holistically the work that you're doing?
I think it definitely is. I am of the school of thought that if one of us is not doing well or suffering, we all are. And so I don't ever get comfortable, even though we've done well and we are thankful. When my husband and I married, we lived in East Austin. And when it was time to kind of expand, gentrification made it such that we could not live there or stay there. So we moved out to the outskirts, but it doesn't mean that we don't return every day to do the work. And I think that is the motivator. And I just don't want liberation for Black folk. That's huge. But I want us to be co-creators of a community where inclusivity isn't a punchline. Like, we're actually inclusive, right? Austin has this label of being progressive and accepting. We have a lot of work to do because the Black folks are leaving. So we're not hitting it. We're not doing it.
It's this attempt, and this might be, I had this conversation earlier today. At times that feels like there's a rebranding of stuff, and there's certain buzzwords that I feel that they're buzzwords that it's like, this is the thing to say, but I don't know if it's actually in practice. Case in point, when people talk about, oh, we're doing impact work, or it's like, are you though? Or, recently as we're recording this, we're about 5 days or so removed, or within a week of Juneteenth, right? And I just remember watching it on CNN, and it was just like being commercialized and resold to us. And I was like, these are Pan-African colors. Juneteenth has its own flag. I was like, did they rebrand freedom? And I was just like bugged out about it. And there is to I think what you were touching on, it's kind of, it happens in so many pockets of feeling progressive and feeling quote unquote woke. And that's not what's happening.
Right. And I will also say that as somebody that's been doing it a while, you have to guard against settling, right? It's so pervasive, the rebrand, the Juneteenth ice cream.
They had cocoa butter. I saw it. I was like, look.
I saw the Vaseline too. I'm like, really? Don't be ashy on Juneteenth. Here's some Vaseline, same product.
Free yourself from ash.
Right. Liberate yourself from ash, right? Like, okay. So in all of that, what I have to be careful about though is settling. Like, well, at least they did something. Like, I think they depend on us to do that. Like, we gave you some ice cream. What's your problem? The problem is that is absolutely performative, and you didn't even get it right.
Yeah, that's the thing where you can watch I try not to be, because it's a thin line, and I don't want to have this notion of conflict between, groups that ultimately should be together, people of color that should be together. But at the same time, it's this notion of don't let other people determine what it should be. Don't people of color yourself out of doing what's right by Black folks, doing what's right by brown folks, and so on, because it turns into a lump of people. And it's like, oh, we gave y'all something, as opposed to, okay, this is being earmarked specifically for Black women or Black men or so on, however they want to cohort that out. So it's a really weird dynamic, and it's important to your point, I think, to not settle and be aware of it and be cognizant of what's going on.
But not only that, when that happens repeatedly, it also creates oppression Olympics and a comparative pain.
Yeah.
Project between groups, right? So it's like, okay, why are you asking me? We just gave you the Juneteenth ice cream. I know you don't want this thing, right? So it actually creates an interlining of the psyche between groups too, that perpetuates a scarcity mentality. Not good. That creates like a comparative thing. Like, oh no, ours was work. It's not good.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that. At least where I'm at, like last month. And it was interesting because I think it was both AAPI month and like Jewish Heritage Month. And I just remember there was some weird conflicts in conversation. I was like, it can be both. I don't know what you guys want. Like,
right. But you know what's so scary about that? The reason why it always falls into the either or mode is because we are conditioned by way of white supremacy where you have to pick. We need to be on the both and.
Yeah.
And not the either or. Why can't, because also peppered in there in that month were a bunch of other things that Hallmark made up. sibling day, all the time, right? We get the opportunity to hold in its entirety those things, and those things can also coexist and not diminish each other.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's like these things have come up in a big, bad Madison Avenue sort of way post-pandemic. And it's just like I see it. And I think a lot of people see it. And it's just like, look, I'm going to take my day and enjoy it. And like I was taken aback, I want to say a little bit on, but I also had to recognize where I was at. On Monday, it was just, older white dude, had to be in his 60s. He was like, Happy Juneteenth. And I was like, thanks, bro. Like I don't know what to do with that. But it's better than when I first experienced. I was walking in the park, doing my normal, like I was jogging rather in the park, and I saw these two white dudes. One was wearing like a kufi, and I was like, look, man, this is a costume now. On the last Juneteenth, I was like, what's happening?
Not to be confused with the family that showed up at our event, and they all had on matching black Juneteenth shirts with white writing, like they were a dance team, and just absolutely so excited to be there. I didn't know what to do with that. I was like, How do I feel about that?
And the thing is, you sit there, you observe it, and you almost have to do that dissection. At least that's what I try of, all right, what's the intent here? Or what do I think the intent is? And and sometimes I have to kind of catch myself because I was like, all right, that was weird. But also, you know what? I'm in the South. This dude didn't have to say anything. He could have just kept strolling. And I was like, all right, at least there's some attempt to shift things and maybe change the hearts and minds. And that's something, I suppose. But yeah, it's still, notice the full spectrum of things that are happening.
I think we, though, have to be willing to say, what's the intent, and be able to think about, too, the people doing that. Mm-hmm. What's the impact? Like, is it a positive impact? Is it a negative impact? Like, don't stop the conversation at intent. Like, my intentions can be good and I can harm you.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And I think that's the thing that we do very well here. And this is veering off, but also it's still worth saying when we do these things of like cancellations and things of that, I'd rather have the discourse and understand fully what the situation is versus, it's almost like editing. It's like, let me put that 3-second delay on it because I don't want this out there. And it's like, no, let's understand this so I can fully get why you suck or whatever it is.
Yeah, let's sit in the messiness of the 3-minute delay. Mm-hmm. Let's just sit in it. And if I don't have all the answers after I have done that, that's okay too. Yeah. Sometimes there isn't closure on it. Still rather have the hard conversation.
Yeah, it's the same way as, any entrepreneur when they're dealing with a website. Your website's never done. No. They're always working on it. So this is something much more important. The social component of people getting together and working together and degree of unity, all of these different things that we aim for, right? It is not something that, okay, we're done with that, right? That was last year. We're doing something else this year.
Right. But the other thing is that's anything for me. You don't ever graduate from your blackness. There's not like, you don't get how do you know when there's not a woke graduate, like we're not monolithic. We're not monolithic, right? We are all creating it as we're doing it and we're thinking ourselves when we know more, it should be able to stand as such. I say that to artists all the time, like you don't have to define what is art to you right next year. Define to you what art is right now in a pandemic. Where where supplies are like,
and that's a thing that happens a lot. Where is going to the art conversation, it's interesting. Like I'm an advocate for this being, podcast being a platform, being a version, being art, and oftentimes people want to classify it as it's a marketing tactic or it's just journalism. It's this, is that. It's like I do mine's artfully. I don't just go after who's popping. I go after who I think I can have a cool conversation with, who I think has something of merit to talk about. It's curated. There's a curatorial part to this. There's preparation. There's a lot of things that go into it. And I almost don't use the term podcaster anymore because it feels deprecated. It feels kind of icky. Yeah.
I agree. And you know what? I have found people that usually label it, that then become chains for us. are not necessarily creative. And so they then for them cognitively, they have to label it in order and minimize it in order for it to be tangible for them. But those of us who get it understand this, because understand that curated conversations are a dying thing, that people go up to a certain point, but they're not willing to have all the questions that, or all the conversations. I think even on down to, like, I have a person that I'm real close to, and she's like, I'm a chef. I'm like, no, you're not. You are a food architect.
I love it.
Right? Like, don't just because people cannot hold your gifting, Rob. Like, don't let them push you into what their cognition can absorb.
Yeah. One of my friends was he was a food blogger, and that's what he was calling himself. And I was like, no, you're an Epicurean journalist. He was like, damn, that sounds good. I was like, oh, I know. I was like, I have a marketing background. Yep.
Somebody on our team is a writer, Regine. She's amazing. And she started these whole series of articles on pocket food. Like, every culture has a food that fits in something. Taco, empanada. Like, she started doing that. It was amazing. And so one day she was talking about, like, I got to do, I'm getting ready to write this. And I'm like, you are getting ready to educate an entire community of people on why safe harbor, like comfort food.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, okay. I'm like, you're right. It's art.
Yeah.
The way you put those words together, it's art.
Absolutely. So I want to shift into this question because, being an entrepreneur and just, the nature of how this conversation has gone so far, I think that this one is very prudent. Often we hear the saying, it's business and not personal. And I think that idea is, using my term again, deprecated, because it's still people. And hence, if it's people, it is personal. Describe the role of people and specifically like empathy when it comes to the work that you're in.
So I got a really good opportunity. I always say that, in leadership, it's always going to be people before profit. And I don't say that as a tagline. I mean it. I mean, you have to be consciously aware of who is working around you and beside you, and that you cannot lead for sake of the agenda, the KPI, the goal, the metrics. I got a really good heaping dose of that the last 2 years with the pandemic, right? And so what I realized is, this is when I knew that my leadership, my empathy monitor was off. When I would have just general one-on-ones with the team and say, hey, I just want to check in with you. We're in a pandemic, because we were isolated, like we hadn't seen each other. Yeah. And that virtual thing is a whole other, discussion. And I would get online and go, how are you doing? And they would immediately go into their to-do list and give me, and I would go, stop. How are you doing? Oh, right. That told me right then that I was not leading the best I could from an empathy perspective, that they automatically went into their to-do list. So the reset for me was several racial reconciliation sabbaticals for the team paid.
Yeah.
And it was, we're shutting it down. If you answer an email, if you respond, like I would test them. If you respond to a text, the group text, if you answer an email, I need y'all to go off into a cabin in the woods. It's safe. This is Texas. And just be, right? And that had not been done specifically in the nonprofit. They're like, wait, what? Yeah, because they are absolutely harmed her after the George Floyd thing. We were on sides. Like, there's no way to lead into that without empathy. There's no way to gut through that when it was so painful to walk through. So you either lean into it with empathy, or you're going to lose your team.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's simple. So to me, business and not personal. Business is personal.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it.
And I think the stuff that we're seeing now with how the Great Resignation and things of that nature, we're seeing it. We're seeing like people are leaving because of, wages and things of that nature, but also you got to like where you're working. And last year, for instance, my day job, I was really considering other options. And the thing that really kept me where I was at was actually like it here. I like what I do. I like my boss. I like the people that I work with. For the most part, because they leave me alone. And other places, it's just probably not that. And it's like that peace of mind, that personal thing, that thing that matters to me as an individual, that's factors into my decision. So again, you're right. And one of the things that came up was, when George Floyd and the fallout with that happened, I remember my boss is a white woman. She was like, I'm not black. Y'all need to take a day. Take it, please. Take care of yourselves because it's rough out here and it's bad. And it's like she got it. She got what people needed, and it's this thing where we like to be resilient in a weird way, resilient in a economic sort of way. So we're doing the trials and all of that stuff for January 6th right now and wrapping that up. We had that happen. We have school shootings and things of that nature happen, and we just bounce back like it didn't happen. We just got to go back to work. We just have to carry that with all our different, maybe attachments to it. Like, oh, I got a kid. That could have been my kid. Or they stormed the Capitol, like our democracy, the fabric of what this country is supposed to be. And we're expected to like the 24-hour news cycle. Let's move on to something else. We're done with that.
Right. I call it resilience abuse. And it is scary that by way of, how we're expected to show up, we're just supposed to keep going. And it's become abusive. It's like, you're resilient. Well, I'm sick of that word. What if I don't want to be resilient? Right? What if I need a minute? What if I need to process? We don't allow for it. As a matter of fact, we see that as weakness, whereas people that stop their footing, it's strength. Yeah. But we position it as weakness.
Yeah. So I got a couple more here before I get to those rapid fire questions that everyone loves. So are there any thoughts or advice that you would share with like young entrepreneurs, CEOs within this kind of current economic climate and employment climate, as we were kind of touching on a bit there?
Yeah, I have a lot to say. If you have not taken the time to really think about who you are and who you want to be in the space as an entrepreneur, spend that time up front. That allows you to have a boundary and framework around what is not negotiable for you early on. And then I always say to entrepreneurs that I'm coaching or giving advice to that whatever your framework is, figure it out and use it to make your decisions. So for me, I'm always on this three-prong approach of what do I need to lift? What do I need to care about and lift? What do I need to leverage? Like what's already out there that I can partner with and leverage and make bigger? And what do I need to leave the hell alone?
Right.
And that's it. And I sit in that space and people are like, that's all you need? That's all you need. So when I'm sitting in spaces and I'm like, oh my gosh, let me think about what I need to lift. I might not be doing 50 things because I can't do 50 things great, but I can do 3 things great. So it becomes, what am I going to leave alone? What am I not going to do? Right? Sometimes I start there. What am I not going to be doing? What does not define me in this work? And I think what happens is you get scared because the money is real or not. And you start morphing and taking on stuff and thinking you have to be everything. And you don't. And you look up, you're burned out, you're tired. People don't have good boundaries with you. I'm really big on, in the beginning, I did all that. I gave it away. I was just happy to be in the space. I just got ready to do a podcast and somebody said, Pam, what would you say to entrepreneurs when people say to them, hey, you'll get exposure? I said, I would say that's code for free.
Yes.
And don't do it.
Yeah. Like there's a marketing budget that's sitting there. There is as a podcaster, it's funny in saying that, but it is. And, there have been times that, from the vantage point that I'm in, like I've been doing this for a very long time. And if someone comes to me like, oh, we can offer you space or exposure. I was like, yeah. So what's your marketing budget like? Because that's where I can send you an MOU or I can send you a proposal. Right. And that changes the conversation a bit. And it's like, yeah, no, this isn't some fly by night. And if you want that, it's easy. You do it.
If you knew how to do it,
why would you hit me up?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm big on that. And I get mad because like even in this city in the last couple of years, when I first got in the role at Six Square, artists were mad coming to me talking about they've never been paid for whatever. So one of the big things that we onboarded was we do no programming without the ability to pay the artist. Period. Absolutely will not do it. Right. And so we spend a lot of time talking about money and investing. Right. So we've done DJ residencies, and we've even said we're going to pay over market rate to stand in the gap for ways in which they miss out. And sometimes when I'm in meetings and somebody's like this corporation called me that we'd really like a DJ for our all hands meeting, I'm like, that's great. It'll cost this. And they're like, oh, well, we were just hoping that they, because they're going to be exposed to. I said, no, I would be perpetuating the cycle if I told them to give away their talent for free. And did you say that to the white caterer, the sound crew, and the people that did your little goodies for your table? You did not.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And that's the thing that's important. And, the spot that I'm in at times where I know what it takes to run my ship, and, I own my equipment, and I'm quote unquote the talent behind it. So, well, not quote unquote, but I'm the talent behind it. So, when I may ask for over what I actually need. And what I do, because of some of the circumstances in Baltimore, I try to help out artists when I can. I'm like, yo, I like what you do. What's your Cash App? I'm just going to send you something, because I know that film, for sake of argument, costs more for photographers. And if I'm in a spot, I have a salary, I have a salary job. I want to be able to have this creative practice separate from the day job in a true sense. But if there's a situation where I can help somebody out, and that $75, that $100, whatever, can help them put out work, then that's what I feel my role is.
Well, I think that's so beautiful. I hope everybody on the podcast hears that. I say all the time, if you really, we take advantage, especially in COVID, how often did you utilize the arts as a coping mechanism? How many times? And so why would we not think we would want to invest and pay for that? So, so if you're coming to a concert and you just buy the ticket, you haven't really done anything. By the time they dice that up, how does the person get health insurance? How does the person get supplies? Whatever there are, how does that person travel and share their gifts? Yeah. Cold hard cash. So I always say to people, going beyond the ticket price, if there's an opportunity to give more, to do exactly what you just named, do it. Do it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been doing outside of this, and really, I think it was a really cool thing that you were saying earlier about really being able to sort out what you're not going to do, what you're going to do. I've been having a harder time doing, because you have those opportunities that present themselves, and, it feels good. It feels almost like a justification. It feels like acknowledgement. It feels like, oh, I've actually won. And, I had to really take a step back and look at, all right, what are the 2 to 3 things that matter to me? And doing this podcast matters to me a lot. And doing some of the community oriented stuff. So I do movie screenings once a month, and it started off as purely movies that were filmed in Baltimore as a way to try to celebrate our culture and maybe bring attention. But also it is drawing people to this arts district. And I'm going to get back to that very soon. And that's something that matters to me, because it's okay, I'm not just, I do a podcast. I want to do and be a part of the community. You can see me, you could touch me, you could talk with me and realize I'm a weirdo, but also it's just oh, this is a real guy, and this is a person that's doing something. Yeah, I hear him having these conversations, but also he's doing this, and there's something that he's deciding to put on, and hopefully someone else wants to do it as well. And someone else wants to do something else, because the art, usually it's the first thing to go right. But I think it's resilient in that way because it's really from the people.
Right. But you doing that and being intentional about it gives other people permission who think that they can't, don't, won't, to do it.
Yeah.
Right. It gives you permission to say, I'm going to support this. This is important to me. And I find it awesome. It's so funny to me, because sometimes I suppose I'd be really, Pam? You're more in the area of such and such. I'm I'm about it all. I'm about the creative process as healing, the creative process as liberation. Creativity is seen as a soft skill. I think it's a hard skill.
Yeah.
Right? We don't treat it as such. It's what are you told when you go to college? Oh my gosh, don't get a liberal arts degree, or don't, right? We're told, how are you going to make money doing that? How many people went to school wanting to be an artist, or who didn't, who are just naturally, able to do what they do and get the message of conditioning of you can't make a living doing that?
Yeah, that's kind of what the story was for me. I wanted to be a comic book writer and artist when I was a kid, and it was like, oh, you should go into business, and that's what I went into, and ultimately the creative thing was still calling. And it was like, it's the Austin Kleon thing. And he was talking about, he wanted to be a musician and he stopped doing music and he felt like this weird phantom limb syndrome from his creativity. That's what I was feeling. And it led to me doing this for 13 years and diving back into doing a comic. I do a comic with my girlfriend, which is really fun. And, she's a writer and it's something that she's interested in. And it's just like, now I'm just feeling like just open to try to just do whatever. And not feel like I'm siloed into one particular area. Oh, you only do podcasts. Nah, I can do a little bit of everything.
Absolutely. And you should, right? Yeah. It's like, yeah, I always am inspired. I always say when I'm in, I am not a creative, but I hang out with creatives. I mean, I've written some books and all that. But I just have an awe of like the ownership of, the training skill set and transferable skills that come from people in the creative space, in the art space, is transformational. I believe it is what will bring communities together, is, to your point, the first to go, the first to get cut, the first to be ignored. I actually believe it is a great connector, convener, and equalizer.
Yes. So I got one more real question before I get to those rapid fire ones, because those are always great. So here's the last one. Since, you said you've been here a long time, you're a little bit of a transplant, I suppose, not a native. So could you tell me a little about your first memory of Austin?
My first memory of Austin was moving here and staying at the Holiday Inn on Town Lake while we were trying to find a house and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, where am I? And remembering a first show at Stubbs. I can't even remember the artist. I was asking my brother this the other day, Bonnie Raitt. I don't even remember. And I don't remember who it was. And just sitting there going, there's going to be access to live music on a Tuesday night. I was like 11, like 11, and driving down 6th Street and going, oh my gosh, look at all the lights. Like their dream, like these lights represent like people's dreams, like people like, because you would see like an artist on the street, and a guy on the guitar ripping on the guitar on the street. I was like, oh my gosh, so fascinating. And so my early recollection was a slower but more connected time on the east side. I remember the fences were shorter because people talked across the fence as neighbors before gentrification. I remember people knowing each other in a way that we don't now. We're kind of disenfranchised in our neighborhoods. And I remember always, my parents always taking us to some show, play, program, art installation, gallery, mural, or whatever. And I'm happy to say that those traditions in their truest form, we have done with our kids. So my kids have been at many mural, unveiling. We expose them to everything. Some of the stuff they're like, what is this? Is this opera? It sucks. What do we, But our thing is exposure brings about expansion. Mm-hmm. Whether you deciding to not like it is fine, but we're always going to expose you to all of it.
I love to hear that.
So, yeah. But for me, it's a long journey in Austin. I love a city that hasn't always loved me as a Black person, mm-hmm. but I still get up every day trying to strengthen it.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of this. This has been great. Now, for all the goodwill that we've established in the last half an hour or so, it's time for some rapid fire questions. So please keep in mind, you want to answer these as quickly as you can, just first thing that comes to mind. Let's not overthink it. Here's the first one. Name a gadget that you feel that's changed your life.
Pop socket.
Nice. Which historical figure do you most identify with?
Barbara Jordan.
That's the second time that name's come up today. What's your favorite movie?
I'm embarrassed. The Fast and Furious franchise.
Nice. That's not bad. That's not bad. It's about family.
I'm embarrassed. I hate to say it, but everybody in this house knows. I stopped, drop, and roll for Fast and Furious. Anyway.
That's great.
It's not the best acting, but it's entertaining.
And I think that's the point of those movies. You just want popcorn. You want escapism, right? You know?
Total escapism.
I mean, I feel like they're in space at this point, and I've tapped out at like 5. I think that was just at Fast 5, maybe. I think that was the last one I've seen.
We're at 9, dude. You got to catch up. You're embarrassing me.
Yeah, I'll catch up. My brother loves those movies, so he's like, yo, look, I need to walk you through the Fast series.
It's deep.
Lastly, if you had to summarize what you do in terms of doing one thing well, what would it be?
Navigating complexities with grace and empathy.
Well, there you have it. I want to thank you for coming onto this podcast. And I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks, the listeners, where they can check you out, your work, all of that good stuff, website, all of that stuff. Thank you so much.
This is amazing. This is absolutely by far my favorite podcast of the year.
Thank you.
You are phenomenal. Keep going. And people can find me at Pamela Benson, BENSON Owens.com or at sixsquareatx.org. And I have a podcast called Rooted myself to check out. And you are amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
This has been great. Thank you so much. So for Pamela Benson Owens, I am Rob Lee, saying that there's art in and around your community, culture in and around your community, entrepreneurship in and around your community. You just got to look for it. The Truth in This Art Beyond is produced with the generous support from Raisin in the Sun, Black Art Matters ATX, and Six Square. Raisin in the Sun is an Austin-based nonprofit organization whose work focuses on cultivating resilience through art and environmental initiatives. Find more out about their mission at raisininthesun.org. Black Art Matters ATX focuses on amplifying Black voices in Austin's cultural conversation by financially supporting new work from Black artists based in Austin. Learn more about their work at blackartmattersatx.org. And Six Square. Their work focuses on preserving and celebrating the historical legacy of the African American community that once thrived in Central East Austin. Learn more about their work at sixsquare.org. Thank you all for your generous support.